The US Navy mounted a 35 kilowatt laser on CVN-77. It burns drones out of the sky for $5 a shot, powered by a nuclear reactor that never runs dry. And the comment section exploded. Some of you did the math. If the laser needs 2 to 5 seconds per target and the enemy sends 5,000 drones, the laser is worthless. Others went further. Wrap the drone in a mirror, cover it in aluminum foil, spray it with reflective paint, paint it blue. A $2 roll of kitchen foil should defeat a weapon that cost billions to develop. Mirror reflects light. Laser is light. Problem solved. It sounds so obvious that it feels like the engineers must have missed something. They didn't miss anything. And what they know, that the comment section doesn't, is that the mirror is not a solution. It is exactly what the Navy wants the enemy to try. Because there is a trap buried inside that logic, and it has nothing to do with optics. It has to do with money. And the laser is not the only weapon on this ship. There is a second system, one that doesn't fire light at all, and against that one, the mirror won't even matter. Today on Navy Decoded, the trap inside the mirror, the weapon behind the laser, and the reason every cheap countermeasure makes the enemy poorer. Subscribe now. Here is the core problem. Kinetic interceptors are economically suicidal against cheap drone swarms. A $2 million missile to destroy a $50,000 drone is a losing equation. The LOCUST laser mounted on CVN-77 solves this magazine death crisis by drawing ammunition from a nuclear reactor instead of a missile tube. But the real adversary in this story was never the drone. It was never Iran. The adversary is the atmosphere. The environmental variables of the open ocean, rain, fog, and salt spray touch the surface of something far more fundamental. A laser beam traveling through humid, salt-laden air over the open ocean doesn't just lose a little intensity. It gets scattered by water molecules, absorbed by salt aerosols, and, worst of all, it heats the air itself. That heated air changes density, and the density gradient acts like a lens. An invisible, uncontrolled lens that bends and bloats the beam outward. Physicists call this thermal blooming. On a clear day in the Nevada desert, a 35 kilowatt laser is structurally lethal at range. Over the Arabian Sea, that same beam is fighting the atmosphere every inch of the way. Beyond roughly 3 nautical miles, the photons scatter too widely to concentrate enough energy on a single point to melt through a fiberglass airframe. The laser becomes a flashlight, not a weapon. That is the physics constraint the Navy is engineering around, and it starts inside the beam itself. To understand what changed with the LOCUST X3 generation, we need to go deeper into how a military laser actually produces its beam, because this is not one giant light source. It is dozens of small ones working in concert. The LOCUST system uses a technology called spectrally beam combined fiber laser. Each individual fiber laser module generates a beam at its own specific wavelength. Then, all of those beams pass through a precision optical component called a diffraction grating, a surface etched with microscopic grooves that bends each wavelength at a slightly different angle. The grating aligns all those individual beams into one single coherent output. The engineering elegance here is not just power, it is survivability. If one fiber module fails during combat, overheats, takes damage, shorts out, the system does not shut down. It keeps firing at reduced power. The engineers call this graceful degradation. We strip away the simplicity of a single source laser. In exchange, we gain a weapon that never fully dies. It just dims. A dimmed laser is still lethal. It simply requires a fraction of a second more dwell time to melt the target. The ship trades a tiny margin of speed for absolute reliability. The X3 generation pushes the output from 20 kilowatts to over 35 kilowatts. The aperture, the diameter of the optical window through which the beam exits, has been enlarged, allowing the beam to maintain tighter focus at greater distance. Every additional kilowatt means less dwell time required per target. Every millimeter of aperture means the thermal blooming problem gets pushed a little farther out. But power means nothing if you can't hold the beam on a moving target. And this is where the LOCUST X3's tracking system separates it from every previous generation. The fire control software uses a shortwave infrared camera operating between 500 and 2000 cycles per second. To put that in perspective, human vision processes roughly 30 frames per second. This camera is refreshing its targeting solution up to 80 times faster. At that rate, the system compensates for micro-vibrations in the ship's structure, wind buffeting on the target, and evasive maneuvering by the drone. The beam doesn't sweep across the target. It locks onto a single point, the fuel cell, the rotor hub, the wing joint, and holds there with surgical stillness while the thermal load accumulates. A drone that rolls or jinks to spread the heat across its airframe is fighting a tracking system that reacquires the same structural weak point faster than the drone can rotate away from it. We strip away range. Beyond 3 nautical miles, the atmosphere wins. But inside that window, the LOCUST X3 is a precision surgical instrument powered by a reactor that never runs dry, burning targets for less than the cost of a cup of coffee, with a tracking system fast enough to hold a quarter-size spot on a maneuvering drone moving at 100 knots. But the physics of that 3-mile limit creates a problem that precision alone cannot solve. LOCUST kills one target at a time. A swarm doesn't arrive one at a time. It arrives all at once. For that, the Navy needs something fundamentally different. A weapon that doesn't aim at targets individually, but floods an entire volume of airspace with energy. Not coherent light, broadband radiation. The physical limitations of coherent light inevitably point to a different branch of the electromagnetic spectrum, broadband radiation. Why not use an EMP? Why not microwave the entire swarm at once? Project METEOR is a prototype high-power microwave weapon being developed by the Office of Naval Research and the Naval Surface Warfare Center at Dahlgren. Unlike the LOCUST, which fires a precision beam of coherent light, METEOR emits a cone of high-intensity microwave radiation in the L-band and S-band frequencies at an effective radiated power exceeding 30 megawatts. To put that number in context, a commercial cell tower broadcasts at roughly 50 watts. METEOR radiates at 600,000 times that intensity. The kill mechanism is entirely different from a laser. METEOR does not melt airframes, it destroys electronics. Microwave radiation forces its way into a drone's electronics through 2 primary vulnerabilities. The most direct route is front door coupling, where the energy simply enters through the drone's own antennas. Because a drone cannot fly without its GPS receiver, command and control link, or radar altimeter, it must leave these doors open, and METEOR walks right through them. But even if those antennas are shielded, the weapon exploits backdoor coupling. The radiation seeps through microscopic seams, gaps, and joints in the casing, inducing phantom electrical currents in the internal wiring that instantly short-circuit the flight computer and fry the power regulation boards. And METEOR operates in 2 modes. At lower power with a wide bandwidth, it can deceive, spoofing navigation sensors, corrupting telemetry, confusing the drone's guidance without physically damaging it. A soft kill. At full power with a narrow bandwidth, it destroys the physical structure of the transistors on the circuit boards. The drone doesn't reset. It doesn't reboot. The silicon is permanently burned. A hard kill. The decisive advantage of METEOR over LOCUST is geometry. The laser fires a pencil-thin beam at one target. METEOR radiates a wide cone. Every drone that enters that cone, 5, 10, 30, absorbs the energy simultaneously. There is no dwell time per target. There is no sequential engagement. The weapon does not need to aim at each drone individually. It simply fills a volume of sky with radiation, and everything electronic inside that volume fails. Which raises an immediate integration question. Why not simply take the Army's Leonidas system, built by Epirus, and bolt it onto the carrier? The physics answer is brutal. A ground-based HPM system doesn't care what's behind the target. A shipboard system does. If you fire a wide-angle microwave cone from the flight deck of CVN-77, that energy does not stop at the drone. It keeps going, into the radar arrays on the island superstructure, into the avionics of the F-35CS parked on the flight deck, into the guidance seekers of the SM-2 missiles the escort destroyers just launched. That is called EMI fratricide, friendly fire at the speed of light. METEOR is designed from the ground up for the maritime electromagnetic environment. Its beam steering, its power management, and its firing protocols are engineered to coexist with the Aegis combat system, with the SEWIP Block 3 electronic warfare suite, and with the carrier's own sensors. The combat computer must choreograph every firing window so that the microwave cone never sweeps across a friendly radar or a live missile seeker. This electromagnetic deconfliction, managing the timing and geometry of directed energy fire to avoid blinding your own systems, is the single hardest integration challenge in the entire program. METEOR is still a prototype. The Navy is targeting near-term shipboard testing. It is not operational yet. But its beam geometry offers something that LOCUST cannot: the ability to engage an entire swarm, not one by one, but all at once. And unlike a laser, microwave radiation is largely unaffected by rain, fog, and salt spray. The atmosphere that chokes a photon beam barely touches a microwave cone. So the Navy is converging on two kill mechanisms: coherent light that melts airframes and broadband radiation that fries circuit boards. But every weapon in history has eventually met its countermeasure. And somewhere, an engineer on the other side is already working on the answer. Let's walk through what an adversary would need to do to defeat both systems. Against the laser, an adversary has three theoretical countermeasures. The most intuitive approach is to coat the drone in reflective material. A mirror? At low power, it might buy a few extra seconds, but at 35 kilowatts, the energy density is so extreme that it destroys the reflective coating within milliseconds. The mirror vaporizes, and the beam burns straight through the substrate underneath. The reflection window closes before it ever meaningfully opens. Furthermore, a mirror only reflects efficiently at specific wavelengths. Without knowing the exact wavelength of the incoming laser, that mirror is just expensive paint. An alternative is an ablative coating, a heat-absorbing layer that vaporizes to carry energy away, like the heat shield on a re-entry capsule. This is more effective, but ablative material has mass. A Shahed-type drone weighs roughly 440 pounds, and adding 10 to 20 pounds of ablative shielding meaningfully reduces either its range or warhead capacity. The final aerodynamic trick is to spin the drone on its longitudinal axis, attempting to distribute the thermal load across the entire surface instead of one point. It is clever, but the LOCUST X3's SWIR camera, refreshing at up to 2,500 cycles per second, tracks faster than the drone can rotate. The beam holds its lock on the same weak point regardless of the spin. Against Meteor, the options are even more constrained. The obvious answer is a Faraday cage, a mesh of conductive metal wrapped around the drone's electronics to block incoming microwave radiation. And in theory, it works, but here is the physics trap. A Faraday cage that blocks external microwave radiation also blocks the drone's own GPS signal, its command and control link, and its radar altimeter. The drone must open gaps in the shielding to receive navigation data, and those gaps are exactly the front door entry points that Meteor exploits. You cannot simultaneously shield against microwaves and receive the radio signals you need to fly. The second option is to harden the electronics. Use military-grade, radiation-resistant components. Rad-hardened chips are real. They work, but they increase the cost of each drone from roughly $50,000 to between $120,000 and $220,000 per unit. And this is the twist that most analysis misses. The entire strategic value of the cheap drone swarm is that it is cheap. The asymmetric advantage exists because the attacker spends between $20,000 and $20,000 per drone, while the defender spends $2 million per interceptor. That is a 40-to-1 cost ratio in the attacker's favor. But the moment the attacker must add reflective coatings, ablative shielding, Faraday cages, and radiation-hardened electronics to survive directed energy, the drone is no longer cheap. A $50, $20,000 Shahed becomes a $200, $20,000 hardened platform. The 40-to-1 advantage collapses to 10-to-1, and LOCUST still fires at $5 per shot. The Navy does not need the laser to defeat every drone. It only needs the laser to force the adversary to make drones expensive. Thermodynamics handles the rest. Every dollar the enemy spends hardening a drone is a dollar that destroys the economic asymmetry that made the drone swarm viable in the first place. So here is the question that none of the three vectors can answer individually. If the LOCUST X3 is limited to 3 nautical miles by atmospheric physics, and Meteor is still a prototype, how does CVN-77 survive a swarm right now? The answer is that LOCUST was never designed to fight the swarm alone. It was never supposed to. The carrier strike group's Aegis-equipped escorts, the destroyers, the cruisers, engaged the swarm at 100 nautical miles with SM-2 and SM-6 interceptors. Fighter aircraft from the carrier's air wing engage at 50. Electronic warfare systems aboard the EA-18G Growlers jam and deceive at 30. By the time any surviving drones reach the 3-mile envelope around the carrier, the swarm of 100 has been reduced to a handful of leakers. 5, maybe 8. That is what LOCUST was built for, not the stampede, the stragglers. And this reframes the 3-mile limitation entirely. Viewed in isolation, that short range appears to be a critical weakness, a compromise forced by physics. But inside the layered defense architecture, the short range is the design. LOCUST doesn't need to shoot farther because every threat beyond 3 miles is someone else's responsibility. The laser only needs to handle what the billion-dollar missile shield couldn't stop. And it does so silently, without debris, without shrapnel, without foreign object damage on a flight deck full of fueled aircraft. And it does it for $5. That silence matters more than it sounds, because the alternative close-in defense, the Phalanx CIWS, sprays thousands of tungsten rounds per minute, and every round that misses becomes foreign object damage on a deck full of fueled jets. Even if Phalanx hits every target, its magazine is finite. The laser's is not. And if the instinct is to simply bolt 10 more lasers to the flight deck, the constraint is not electrical power. The reactor has plenty. The constraint is thermal management, dissipating the waste heat from multiple high-energy weapons without disrupting flight operations on a deck where jet fuel vapors and ordnance are inches away. When METEOR reaches operational status, it will fill the gap between the kinetic outer layer and the optical inner layer, a middle zone where broadband microwave radiation sweeps the remaining drones out of the sky before they ever reach LOCUST's window. 3 layers, 3 kill mechanisms: kinetic, electronic, thermal, each protecting the layer behind it. And here is the strategic insight that emerges only when you see all 3 vectors together. By handling the cheap threats with directed energy, the carrier preserves its kinetic interceptors. The SSM stays in the tube. The SM-6 stays in the VLS cell. The most expensive weapons in the arsenal are no longer wasted on targets costing tens of thousands of dollars. They are held in reserve, locked, loaded, and waiting for the one threat that truly demands a kinetic response: the hypersonic cruise missile, the advanced anti-ship ballistic missile, the weapons that a beam of light cannot stop, but a $2 million interceptor was specifically designed to kill. If you've been watching Navy Decoded, you know we never evaluate a weapon by what it destroys. We evaluate it by what it costs and what it protects. The laser solved precision. The microwave promises to solve volume. And the countermeasure trap proves something even more powerful. The existence of directed energy weapons forces the adversary to make drones expensive. Every Faraday cage, every ablative layer, every radiation-hardened chip is a tax on asymmetry, a cost that erodes the very advantage that made the drone swarm a strategic threat. But METEOR is not here yet. And every month it remains a prototype, the VLS cells aboard the escort fleet continue emptying against threats that should never have required a kinetic response. So the question engineering cannot answer is this: what runs out first? The engineering timeline for METEOR or the missile stockpile it was designed to protect?